You know that eerie calm before a storm? That was my kitchen 10 minutes before the world flipped on its head. It started with the sound of heels, sharp, deliberate clicks on the hardwood floor. My wife, Clara, moving with the efficiency of someone about to sell the moon to Wall Street. Her big meeting was today. The meeting. The one she had been rehearsing for in front of the bathroom mirror for weeks, pitching to invisible investors while I brushed my teeth like an extra in her life's movie. I was at the counter, pouring lukewarm coffee into a mug that said world's best husband. A gift from Clara back when gifts still meant something and not just empty gestures to keep the peace. The irony wasn't lost on me. She breezed in like a gust of confidence wrapped in silk. Beige power suit, hair pulled back tight, those sharp glasses that made her look like the human embodiment of a Fortune 500. She barely glanced at me, just grabbed her laptop bag and her green smoothie from the fridge. Then it happened. She dropped her phone. Reflexively, she bent down, her manicured fingers brushing under the kitchen island. And there, peeking from the seam of my jacket pocket, because fate loves good theater, was the ring. Not just any ring. My ring. Gold. Heavy. The same one I'd worn every day for 10 years, until last month, when I quietly stopped. That band carried more weight than most people would ever know, and not because of what it symbolized. It wasn't just a ring. It was a loaded confession, a ticking secret I hadn't found the courage, or maybe the cruelty, to say out loud. Clara froze, her hand hovering midair. She didn't speak, but her eyes did. Wide, sharp, slicing through me like she'd just caught me smuggling blood diamonds instead of wearing jewelry. Why? Is your wedding ring in your jacket pocket? Her voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a courtroom drama flips the jury. I should have lied. I should have laughed it off, said it slipped off at the gym, that I'd planned to clean it, anything but the truth. But here's the thing. The truth was too big to fit in that kitchen. Because the truth wasn't about a ring. It was about a letter. And that letter, sealed and waiting inside the inner pocket of that same jacket, contained words that would detonate everything we thought we knew about us. I opened my mouth, but before a single syllable could escape, her phone buzzed on the counter. A name flashed across the screen. Ethan. She snatched it up too quickly. Too guilty. And just like that, the storm I'd been bracing for wasn't the one I expected. My secret could burn us to the ground. But what if hers got there first? Clara didn't even glance at me. Her thumb danced across the phone like a concert pianist, quick, precise, deleting something before my eyes could drink it in. Investor, she muttered, like she was explaining a stain on her blouse. Ethan's on the board. We've talked about him. No, we hadn't. And the way her voice wobbled on his name made my gut twist like a towel wrung dry. Right? I said slowly, masking the burn in my throat with a sip of bitter coffee. I didn't call her out. Not yet, because I had bigger bullets chambered in my jacket. The envelope pressed against my ribs like a living thing. Thick ivory paper, my handwriting on the front. A letter I'd rewritten a dozen times in sleepless nights. The one thing I couldn't say face to face because words like those either save you or scorch everything to ash. And now, she'd seen the ring. She knew something was coming. But hell, she wasn't the only one with surprises, was she? She zipped her laptop bag, lips pressed in a line sharp enough to cut glass. We'll talk tonight, she said, sliding her phone into her bag. I'll be here, I answered, letting the weight of it hang. Not a promise. A warning. She stopped. Just for a second, her posture faltered, like my tone had tripped an alarm in her brain. Then she was gone, heels hammering out a war drum across the floor, the front door snapping shut behind her. Silence settled like dust. Except it wasn't silent, not in my head. The letter was screaming to be read. The ring was burning a hole in my pocket. And Ethan? Who the hell was Ethan? I sank into a chair, my hands gripping the mug until my knuckles glowed white. Should I wait? Let her strut into that meeting thinking she still controlled the narrative? Or should I storm the boardroom and drop my truth in front of her shiny investors like a live grenade? The doorbell shattered my thoughts. Who the hell? I opened the door expecting a delivery guy. Instead, I found a man in a Navy suit, mid-40s, face too familiar to be random. He held a leather briefcase and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Hale? He asked, voice smooth as polished stone. Yes. He handed me an envelope. Not ivory. Not mine. This one was sleek, corporate, heavy with intent. From Ms. Clara Hale, he said, almost kindly, like a doctor delivering bad news. I tore it open before he even turned to leave. Inside, petition for divorce. Filed yesterday. And underneath it, in Clara's handwriting. Don't make this harder than it has to be. The letter in my jacket suddenly felt like a cruel joke. But here's the kicker, the part that made my heart slam like a car crash. On the final page, under respondent's details, in neat black ink, someone had signed as witness. Ethan Cole. I stood in the doorway with that envelope trembling in my hands like it carried a live wire. Divorce. Filed yesterday. Witnessed by Ethan Cole. The name pulsed in my head, each syllable a hammer blow. Ethan Cole. A man I'd never met, but who clearly knew enough about my wife, and maybe about me, to sign his name on the death certificate of our marriage. The delivery guy, or whatever he was, disappeared down the driveway without a backward glance, leaving me alone with the paperwork that turned our 10-year history into a stack of cold legal jargon. Clara Hale, petitioner. David Hale, respondent. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. Funny phrase, isn't it? Irreconcilable. As if this was just about arguments over Netflix passwords and thermostat settings, not everything else. I stumbled back inside, the walls closing in. For a second, I almost laughed. All those nights agonizing over how to tell her. All those drafts of the letter hidden in my jacket like some medieval confession, and she'd beaten me to the punch with a lawyer's signature. Still, I couldn't shred the letter. My secret wasn't going to vanish because Clara got a head start on the exit ramp. If anything, this made telling her more urgent, because my truth wasn't about saving us anymore. It was about something far uglier. I slid the divorce packet onto the counter and pulled out the ivory envelope, running my thumb over my own name written in blue ink. Clara. I'd rehearsed the opening in my head 1,000 times. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't find the courage to speak it out loud. But the rest was the part that kept me up at night. The part that could make her hate me in ways even Ethan never could. Because I wasn't leaving Clara for someone else. I wasn't even sure I was leaving at all, until I learned what my DNA held like a loaded gun. Huntington's. The neurologist's office, the sterile smell, the slow-motion words, positive for the gene. A 50-50 coin flip that landed wrong. A countdown I couldn't stop. 5 years, maybe 10, before my body became a cage and my mind a fog. I planned to tell her gently, maybe after her big meeting, when her world was soaring so I could drag it to hell in the softest way possible. That was my idea of mercy. Now, mercy was off the table. She wanted war. And a strange calm settled over me as that realization clicked into place. Because if Clara thought filing papers would end the story, she had no idea what story she was in. I slid the letter back into my jacket and grabbed my keys. If she was meeting Ethan, I wanted to see the man who signed my death warrant. But as I opened the door, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you want the truth about Clara, meet me at the Regent Hotel. Room 814. Come alone. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. No name, no explanation, just an address that dripped intrigue like blood on a white rug. And here's the twist that really burned. The timestamp on that text? 2 minutes before the divorce papers arrived. The Regent Hotel rose like a polished lie against the skyline. Glass gleaming, flags fluttering, the kind of place that sells secrets by the night. I parked 2 blocks away. Old habit. If someone wanted me here, they wouldn't get the satisfaction of watching me pull up like a trained dog. I walked the rest of the way, jacket collar up, my mind racing through possibilities. Who texted me? A friend of Clara's? Someone trying to squeeze me for money before the divorce hit the courtroom? Or worse, a trap set by Clara and Ethan to make me look unhinged? The lobby smelled like money, jasmine, and leather, with an undercurrent of expensive silence. A pianist played something soft and smug in the corner. I took the elevator without asking questions, because the less I spoke, the fewer lies I had to tell. Floor 8. Carpet thick enough to swallow your footsteps. Room numbers glinting in gold. I found 814 and paused, heart thudding like a fist against a locked door. Knock or walk? That was the question. Before I could decide, the door cracked open, just enough for a sliver of a face to appear. Female, mid-30s, maybe younger, with eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and weren't sure they cared anymore. You're David, she said. Not a question. And you are. She opened the door wider. Someone who thinks you deserve the truth. The room was dim, curtains drawn. The only light came from a single lamp casting a cone of yellow on the bed where a manila folder lay like bait. She gestured for me to sit. I stayed standing. Talk, I said. Her lips curled in something that wasn't quite a smile. Your wife isn't leaving you because of compatibility issues. I figured that out. She's leaving because of Ethan. But not for the reason you think. She slid the folder across the bed. The flap opened just enough for a corner of a photo to peek out. Clara's face, laughing, her hand resting on Ethan's arm in a way that screamed familiarity. "Go ahead," the woman said. "Take a look." I did, and what I saw didn't fit any script my brain had prepared. Not an affair photo. A birth certificate. Name, Clara Cole. Father, Richard Cole. Mother, Margaret Cole. And beneath it, another document. A trust agreement dated 20 years ago. The name Ethan Cole appeared again, listed as successor trustee. The floor tilted under me. Ethan wasn't Clara's lover. He was her brother. And that wasn't even the worst part. The trust listed an inheritance so large it made my salary look like pocket change, and a clause in bold. Marriage to an individual with a degenerative or terminal illness nullifies all claims. My stomach turned to ice. Clara didn't just want out. She needed me gone, legally erased, before my diagnosis became public record. The woman's voice cut through my spinning thoughts. "Now do you see? This isn't about love. It's about money and survival." "Who the hell are you?" I asked. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. "Someone who's been burned by the same family, and someone who thinks we can help each other." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Another text. From Clara. "Cancel dinner plans tonight. Big changes coming. For both of us." I stared at the screen, then at the woman in front of me. And in that moment, I realized something brutal and crystal clear. The letter in my jacket wasn't a confession anymore. It was a weapon. She didn't flinch when I asked her name, just watched me with those ice-gray eyes that suggested she'd been waiting for this question. "Naomi," she said softly, like the word carried history. "Naomi Cole." The surname hit like a sucker punch. My pulse stuttered. "Cole? Another Cole? Let me guess," I said, my voice low. "Ethan's wife? Or his ex?" Her mouth curved, but it wasn't a smile. "His widow." The word hung there, heavy, until the silence pressed against my ribs. "Widow. As in Ethan is dead. The man who signed my divorce papers yesterday." "Impossible," I muttered, rifling through the folder again like the truth might rearrange itself if I stared hard enough. But there it was, in black and white. A death certificate tucked behind the trust documents. Ethan Cole, date of death, 2 weeks ago. Naomi crossed the room, poured herself a glass of something amber from the minibar, and took a slow sip. "He died suddenly. Heart failure. At least that's what Clara told everyone." I looked up sharply. "You don't buy it?" She shook her head, strands of dark hair catching the lamplight. "I lived with Ethan for 8 years. He could run a mile without breaking a sweat. He didn't just keel over in his 40s. Something happened, and your wife was the last person to see him alive." The walls seemed to inch closer. Divorce papers with his name. A dead man as a witness. Clara, moving like nothing was wrong. Naomi leaned in, her voice dropping to a razor whisper. "Clara's scared, David. But not of losing you. She's scared because Ethan knew something big enough to make him a liability. And now you're holding the only thing she can't control." "The letter," I said. She nodded slowly, eyes flicking to my jacket. "She doesn't know you've got a secret of your own. Use it, before she uses you." I should have felt victorious. For the first time since this morning, I wasn't just cornered prey, I had teeth. But then Naomi said one last thing that iced my veins. "Clara's meeting tonight isn't with investors." Her voice cracked like a whip. "It's with a lawyer and a banker to move Ethan's trust into her name. And once that's done, you disappear from the equation entirely. Paperwork, reputation, maybe even existence, if she's desperate enough." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Clara. "Leaving now. Don't wait up." I stared at it until the words blurred. Then I slid the letter out of my jacket and placed it on the bed between us. Naomi's gaze dropped to it, hungry. "That's your ace," she said. "No," I said, my voice steady for the first time all day. "That's our ace. But before we play it, you tell me everything. Why you're really here. Why you care about a man whose wife is trying to erase him." Naomi set down her glass with a sharp click. "Because Clara took Ethan from me before I could take what I was owed. And I'm not leaving empty-handed again." The way she said it made my stomach knot, because for the first time since walking into this room, I realized something. Naomi wasn't here to save me. She was here to use me. And I had no idea if the game I'd just agreed to play had 2 players, or just one. Naomi's words still burned when I left the Regent, the city night swallowing me whole. I didn't trust her, but I trusted Clara even less. The plan was simple. Follow the woman who'd spent a decade sharing my bed and find out exactly what kind of snake pit I'd been sleeping in. Clara's car was easy to spot, sleek black Audi. Vanity plate she swore was classy. I parked a street over and watched her glide out of our driveway, perfect as a magazine ad. My chest tightened. This was the same woman who used to steal my hoodies and dance barefoot in the kitchen. Now she was a stranger in heels, and maybe a killer in lipstick. She drove downtown, cutting through traffic like a shark through minnows, and stopped at the Marquette Tower, 30 floors of law firms and money men who smile while they gut you alive. I parked in the shadow of a delivery truck and waited, hands gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me to something solid. At 8:17, Clara stepped out, her phone pressed to her ear, lips curled in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She vanished through the glass doors. I waited a beat, then followed. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and ambition. A bored security guard barely glanced at me as I strode to the elevator, heart pounding. The digital board behind the desk flashed meeting schedules. My eyes scanned the list until one name slammed me in the chest. Hail, Clara, conference room 29B. Guests, Richard Cole, Margaret Cole. Her parents. I felt my blood run cold. Clara hadn't seen them in years, by choice. They'd never approved of me, and I'd stopped caring. But why meet them now? And why tonight, hours after filing for divorce? The elevator dinged. I stepped inside with two suits who smelled like arrogance and cologne, punched 29, and rode in silence as the floor numbers blinked past like a countdown. The corridor was all glass and chrome, hushed voices behind frosted doors. I followed the sound of Clara's laugh, bright, rehearsed, dripping with something I hadn't heard in months, relief. I stopped outside 29B. The door was cracked just enough for me to see her at the head of the table, her posture sleek, her hands resting on a stack of papers like a queen about to sign a royal decree. Across from her sat an older man and woman in matching gray power, her parents, every inch as cold and perfect as I remembered. And next to them, my breath caught. Ethan, not a photo, not a ghost. The man himself, very much alive, leaning back in his chair like someone who owns the room, and maybe the world. I gripped the doorframe so hard my knuckles went white. Every neuron in my brain fired at once, screaming questions that made no sense. Naomi said he was dead. I saw the death certificate. I saw her eyes when she swore it. So why was Ethan Cole sitting there, alive, smirking at my wife like they'd just buried me instead? And then Clara spoke, the words slicing through the glass like a guillotine. Once this is done, David's little problem won't matter. He'll sign whatever we put in front of him. The room laughed softly. Even Ethan. Especially Ethan. I stepped back into the shadows, my heart thundering like a war drum. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just divorce. This was a setup. And if Naomi was wrong about Ethan being dead, what else was she wrong about? Or worse, what else was she lying about? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message from an unknown number. Leave now if you want to live. The text burned on my screen like a live brand. Leave now if you want to live. My pulse jackhammered. I looked back through the crack in the door. Clara's laughter floated out, soft and venomous, blending with Ethan's low chuckle. His hand brushed her arm like a lover, or maybe like a co-conspirator rehearsing a play they'd written months ago. Leave now. I didn't need convincing. My body moved before my brain caught up, slipping down the hallway, my footsteps muffled by plush carpet. I punched the elevator button, then froze. Too exposed. Too slow. Whoever sent that text wasn't talking about years from now. They meant minutes. I pivoted, found the fire exit, and slammed through the door into a concrete stairwell that smelled of dust and metal. My breath echoed off the walls as I took the stairs two at a time, my jacket flaring like a black flag, the letter in my pocket slapping against my ribs with every frantic step. 29 floors. 28. 27. By the time I hit 18, my lungs were on fire and my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. You're being followed. Keep moving. I didn't look back. Couldn't. My thighs burned, my heart pounded, and every instinct screamed that whoever was behind me wasn't going to settle for a polite conversation. At floor 10, a door banged open above. A voice called out, low, sharp male. My name. I ran harder. 7 floors. 6. My legs felt like wet rope, but adrenaline shoved me downward. At floor 2, I shoved through the exit door and stumbled into the parking garage. Empty. Echoing. Except, no, not empty. A black SUV idled in the corner, engine humming like a predator's growl. Tinted windows. No plates. I bolted for my car, fumbling for keys, when the SUV's headlights flared to life. Tires screeched. It lunged toward me like a bull. I dove behind a concrete pillar as metal screamed against metal, the SUV sideswiping my car, glass exploding like gunfire. My ears rang, my pulse roared. Before I could breathe, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, in a tailored suit, his silhouette etched against the harsh fluorescence. I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. Ethan, alive, smiling, holding something long and black that gleamed under the lights. David, he called, voice dripping with amusement. You weren't invited tonight. I ducked lower, cold sweat slicking my spine. My phone buzzed again. Third text. Garage. West stairwell. Now. I sprinted, hugging the shadows as Ethan's footsteps echoed closer. My lungs clawed for air as I darted through the west exit door, slamming it behind me. Stairs again. Up this time, 2 flights, 3, until I burst into an alley behind the tower. And there she was, Naomi, waiting under a flickering streetlight like a scene from a noir nightmare. Her eyes sharp, her face unreadable. You lied to me. I spat, chest heaving. She tilted her head, calm as a chess master. No, she said softly. I just didn't tell you everything. Then she held up her phone, screen glowing with the same texts I'd just received. And before I could process that, she added the sentence that turned my blood to ice. Ethan isn't supposed to be alive. She wasn't even out of breath, like watching my life implode was just another Tuesday for her. What does that even mean? I hissed, glancing over my shoulder. The alley was empty, but my pulse still raced like a siren in my ears. Naomi tucked her phone away with the casualness of someone who knew far more than she was saying. It means everything you thought you understood? Throw it out the window. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low and sharp. Start talking, Naomi. Now. She sighed, like a teacher disappointed in a stubborn student. Ethan was supposed to transfer the trust, Clara's inheritance, quietly. No drama, no loose ends. Then he vanished. Everyone assumed he was dead because Clara wanted it that way. Why? Because a missing brother means no oversight. The trustee disappears, and suddenly Clara has full control of the assets. Naomi's gaze bored into me. That's why she rushed those divorce papers. Your diagnosis makes you a liability. She can't risk you contesting the trust later when everything's in her name. My throat tightened. You knew about the diagnosis? Her silence was answer enough. I swallowed hard. So what's your angle? Sympathy? Her laugh was quick and sharp. No, David. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here for leverage. Clara thinks she's playing chess. But Ethan's showing up alive. That just flipped the board. I stared at her, the puzzle pieces grinding into place. Clara plotting a clean exit. Ethan staging his own disappearance. Naomi stepping out of the shadows with a smile like a blade. Here's what we're going to do, Naomi said, her tone smooth as poured whiskey. You walk back in there, sign nothing, say nothing. Let them think you're broken, beaten, ready to roll over. Meanwhile, we make sure the right people see the wrong paperwork. Documents that tie Ethan and Clara to some very questionable timing. I folded my arms. And what do you get out of this little crusade? Her eyes gleamed. What I'm owed. And what you deserve. A future that doesn't end with you penniless and branded a fool. Before I could reply, my phone buzzed again. Clara this time. Change of plans. Home by midnight. We need to talk. Naomi's lips curved into a knowing smile. She's getting nervous. Nervous. That made 2 of us. Because if Naomi was right, the game had changed, but I still had no idea which side of the board I was really standing on. Midnight crept in like an uninvited guest. The house was dark except for the soft pool of light spilling from the kitchen. Clara's signature move when she wanted to stage a conversation as casual. She was there, leaning against the counter in her silk blouse, hair still immaculate from her meeting. A glass of wine dangled from her fingers like a prop. You've had quite a day, she said lightly, as though the word divorce wasn't already a knife between us. I set my jacket on the chair, the letter still inside, heavy with words I hadn't decided whether to use. So have you. Clara smiled that perfect smile, the one that used to melt me and now made me check for trapdoors. David, let's skip the theatrics. You've seen the papers. I've thought this through, and honestly, it's better for both of us. You'll be taken care of. Taken care of? I echoed, letting the phrase roll around like poison in my mouth. Interesting choice of words. Her brows arched. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I walked to the fridge, opened it, stared at shelves of almond milk and overpriced sparkling water, giving myself a beat before I dropped the first grenade. Funny thing about your meeting tonight. Clara stiffened, just barely, but enough. What about it? Oh, nothing. I let the door swing shut, turned to her with a mild smile. Just that it wasn't investors, was it? Your parents send their regards, by the way. And Ethan? Well, seeing him alive was a real highlight. The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. For For the first time in months, Clara's mask cracked. A flicker of panic, quick and sharp, then gone. You've been following me? Call it curiosity. I slid into a chair, folded my hands like we were discussing weekend plans. But that's the beauty of marriage, isn't it? So many surprises. Her voice turned cool, clipped. Whatever Naomi told you. Naomi. I cut in, feigning surprise I didn't feel. Ah, so you know she's involved. That simplifies things. Clara's eyes narrowed. What do you want? There it was, the real question. The one she'd been circling all night. I leaned forward, voice calm, deliberate. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tear up those papers. Publicly, we'll keep playing happy couple until your little inheritance situation resolves. Privately, you'll transfer a fair settlement to an account I control. Now, not later. And then, when I walk away, it'll be on my terms, not yours. Her laugh was brittle glass. You think you have leverage? I reached into my jacket and pulled out a thin folder. Not my letter, not yet, but the copies Naomi handed me hours ago. Documents stamped with dates, signatures, and one glaring inconsistency. Ethan's witness signature dated after his supposed death filing. Clara's color drained. Perjury's such an ugly word. I murmured, sliding the folder across the counter. Especially when it's tied to a trust worth 8 figures. For the first time all day, silence favored me. Clara's grip on the glass trembled. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared at the papers like they were a live grenade. Finally, she whispered, "What do you really want, David?" And for a heartbeat, I almost told her the truth, that I didn't want revenge or money, just one moment of honesty before everything unraveled. But then I remembered the look in her eyes at that conference table, the look of someone planning a future that didn't include me. So I smiled. A new game, Clara, and I'm holding the first move. The kitchen clock ticked like a slow drumbeat, marking the last moments of the life I thought I had. Clara stood frozen, her manicured fingers grazing the edge of the folder, her perfect world dangling by a paperclip. You've made your point, she said finally, her voice a brittle whisper. Name your number. I almost laughed. After everything, betrayal, schemes, a dead man who wasn't dead, she thought this was about money. It's not about a number, I said softly. It's about clarity. I reached for my jacket, slid out the ivory envelope, and placed it gently on the counter between us. Her eyes darted to it, wary. What's that? My truth, I said. The one I wanted to tell you before all this. She hesitated, then tore it open. Her eyes skimmed the words, and for the first time tonight, she didn't look powerful. She looked human. If you're reading this, I couldn't say it out loud. 2 weeks ago, I tested positive for Huntington's disease. It's not a death sentence, not yet, but it means time is shorter than we thought. I wanted to prepare you, protect you. I even considered leaving so you wouldn't be burdened with what's coming. But I loved you too much to turn our life into a countdown. And now, it seems the choice has been made for me. Her hands shook by the last line. She set the letter down like it burned. David, why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked, barely audible. I met her eyes, steady. Would it have changed anything? Before the lawyers? Before Ethan? She opened her mouth, then closed it. And in that silence, I heard every answer she couldn't give. I stood, sliding my phone into my pocket. Here's how this ends. You keep your trust. I keep my dignity. We settle quietly. No press, no scandal. And after that, Clara, we're done pretending. She stared at me, something like regret flickering in her eyes, but it was too late for flickers. I walked to the door, then paused. One more thing, I said without turning. If Ethan ever calls, tell him this. I'm not his problem. And neither are you. Not anymore. The night air hit like a baptism as I stepped outside. Cool, clean, full of unknowns. Naomi's car idled across the street, headlights glowing like twin beacons. I slid into the passenger seat. Well, she asked. It's over, I said. Then I looked out at the sleeping city and let the truth settle in. At least for them. Naomi smiled faintly. And for you. I thought of the clock ticking inside me, of the years I might have, the ones I wouldn't waste. For me, I said, it's just beginning. As we drove away, the letter lay on Clara's marble counter. Ink on ivory, words she'd never forget. Not because they ruined her, but because they reminded her of something money couldn't buy, schemes couldn't secure, and divorce papers couldn't erase. Once, someone loved her enough to fight the truth just to spare her pain. But that man was gone, and the new one had finally learned how to live.